Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, July 15th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, one dead, two critically injured as Trump nearly assassinated by a 20-year-old lone shooter with an AR-15. Meanwhile, Trump Judge Elaine Cannon dismisses Trump's stolen document case over the special prosecutor appointment. Israel kills 90 civilians, including dozens of women and children, in a failed attempt to kill a Hamas leader. Ceasefire talks continue, however, as some Hamas leaders offer a nonpartisan governance of Gaza upon a ceasefire. With Trump edging up in the polls, the RNC begins tonight, supposedly under the theme of bringing the country together. Democratic establishment cools its effort to get Biden to step down, hopefully for now. Elon Musk announces donation to Trump. We'll know how much in just a matter of days. And Rudy Giuliani, given no bankruptcy protection from creditors, he owes a real lot of money.
That's our good news for the day, folks.
There you go. Almost 300,000 people in Houston still without power. And lastly, more good news, the DOJ is getting ready to sue RealPage for aiding rental market collusion. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm told I'm peaking a little bit. It is
Monday. Monday. Holy crap. God, there's so much going on. I mean, maybe you might have even said this on Friday, but it applies even more today. I wish we lived in less interesting times. I really do.
Indeed.
It's horrible.
Lot in the news today. We're switching up our format a little bit this week. We will have an interview tomorrow on the program. We will. Folks are asking us to cover Hakeem Jeffries' horrible press conference. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We will.
That was on Friday, I think, right? Or that got drowned out in the news. Apparently, it's not. He's like the Speaker of the House, I guess, but only really in, or he's the leader of the Democrats in the House, but only in name only a bit, because it seems like Mama Bear Pelosi is the one calling the shots behind the scenes still at this point.
I mean, I think it's really more she is the one who can have some sway with Biden because they, have grown up together, I guess. All right, let's get into this. I imagine you have all seen this footage a million times, but we will play it again. This takes place in Pennsylvania. We're going to go through all the aspects of this. I imagine many of you have heard many of the things that we have to talk about because, there's a limited amount of reporting, at least around some of the biggest questions, like who was this shooter? We know who he was, but why did he attempt to shoot Donald Trump? We will get to that. He's a registered Republican, for what it's worth. I think different people are going to have different theories as to why he was doing this. We may never know. The other question is how did the Secret Service F this up so badly?
Oh, yeah.
Because we've got footage of people seeing the guy before he shoots for an extended period of time. And apparently, we will talk about this as well, a police officer climbed up a ladder onto the roof, saw the guy, and when Crooks, the name of the shooter, pointed his rifle at him, the cop basically just went down the stairs again, and that's when Crooks started to fire on Trump, hitting at least 3 people in the crowd, killing one almost instantaneously, I guess. And then we will talk about the responses. But here is that footage. Donald Trump speaking. You will notice just before he is shot at, he turns to his right, apparently to look at a Jumbotron that had a graphic, no doubt, talking about how horrible immigrants are. And that's what appears to have saved his life.
Take a look at what happened.
Okay, pause it for 1 second. Now, so you hear, I think it's 4 shots. Those are the shooters. And then the next shots you hear are Secret Service snipers firing back at him. We have footage of that moment when the snipers realize that they spot the shooter.
Although a little bit of levity for folks right now, the guy that is supposedly the reincarnated JFK Jr., you can spot him in the background. So, wow.
Confusedly standing up as gunshots ring out.
He's really been through a lot, JFK Jr. in his second incarnation.
And now you're going to hear basically the Secret Service people yelling, we're going to move him. We're going to move him. And then they decide to wait until they can confirm that the shooter has been killed or subdued. And that's when they start to move him. And then you're going to hear Donald Trump say twice, "Let me get my shoes." Apparently his shoes fell off. People have different theories about that as to why his shoes fell off just as he crouched down. And then I think I want you to pay attention, too, to what he says when he shakes his fist. This is relevant because when we're talking about, as inevitably, people start talking about the rhetoric and both siding the rhetoric. But here, continue.
Take a look at what happened.
Move his spear. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Move. Up. Move. Go.
Hawkeye's here.
Pause it. You can hear them say Hawkeye's here, and I assume they're referring to that guy who just crosses the stage. Maybe that is a code name for their SWAT team or their counterterrorism team. And then when that person's there to provide cover for them moving the president, you could see here they were ready to move, and then they stopped because someone said you got to wait for that type of coverage. Continue.
We ready? Are we good?
And they say shoot her down.
Are we good to move?
We're clear. We're clear.
So now they know the shooter's been taken out here. And that's why he can stand. Right.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody. sir. We gotta move to the bus.
Pause it. You can hear him say 3 times, "Let me get my shoes." He really likes those shoes, I guess. I mean, I imagine he's in a state of shock at this point.
Oh, of course.
And but it is an odd thing to be worried about. But I've never been in this situation, so who knows? Continue.
Watch out.
He's posing here.
Pause it so you can hear him say, "Wait, wait," and then he thrusts his fist out and mouths, "Fight, fight." My question is like, who exactly are these people supposed to be fighting?
They haven't made a determination about that yet because, as we know, the shooter was a 20-year-old white male. We're still trying to determine what his motives were, if there were any. I mean, there have been assassination attempts on presidents' lives that have been expressly political, but also have been for reasons like, say, I want to impress Jodie Foster.
That is Hinckley's attempt,
right.
And really nearly killed Ronald Reagan. I mean, they had to pull a bullet out of him, and it was close to his heart.
So we just don't know his motives at this point. He also seemingly had a fairly scant online presence, so it's difficult to discern. As you mentioned, he was a registered Republican, but also donated $15 to this progressive PAC. But there's also some guesses that it could have been like one
interviews are pretty clear that he was a conservative.
That's what it seems
so
to
far
indicate, right? Like those emails that get sent out, they have buttons that are it's an easy donation. Sometimes the politics of the donation are obscure, so you don't know. But I think they're struggling.
My understanding too is that the email that he responded to was a poll that said, "Should Biden pardon Donald Trump?" I'm not. I mean, this is, I think, Ryan Grimm's email over at what's his
on Drop Site.
On Drop Site. So who knows?
It's hard to say. The point is just that they're struggling to. I think that the political motive is not clear on its face. The fact that he was a white guy, let's be real, I think that the Republicans may have a bit of a harder time politicizing this because it's been this eerie period afterwards where it's almost like, I mean, I was shocked to see some people say, I don't know how much of an effect this will have on the election. It was impossible to believe that in the immediate aftermath. But I'm struggling to see how they're using this as a motivator right now because they don't. I don't know what the politics of this are going to be for them.
I think part of it's going to be defined by in many respects like after a debate where what happens in the spin room, as it were, and they apparently have retooled at least his speech for the RNC to make it about unity. Which, again, his first words after talking about his shoes, again, he's in a state of shock. But he was, he had his wits about him enough to turn to his people and say, wait, wait. To turn to the Secret Service and say, wait, wait, as he addressed the crowd. And the first thing that he addresses the crowd with is an exhortation to fight.
Well, that's in keeping with his history, and let's be real, this is horrible. I'm so glad he was not killed. Political violence is abhorrent. We all believe that. But that's not what the MAGA movement believes. That's not what Donald Trump believes.
No, we have polling to show that Republicans, not overwhelmingly, but certainly a plurality, or I should say, they have about 15 points, 20 points more inclination, maybe even more than that, 30 points more inclination than Democrats to justify political violence.
He's justified violence against migrants, against protesters.
Pelosi's husband. This is Donald Trump's bread and butter. Against process. Congress, against his own vice president, like you say. So here he is. He's being taken off. He's just yelled, fight, fight. And as if we'll follow this video out. So there's that. This is, let's talk just briefly about the extraordinary security failure here. Do we have a picture of the, can we get a picture of the map of the,
yeah, that's good.
Of the thing. It's pretty astonishing. Do you have that, guys?
As they pull that up, I mean, it was only 160 yards, 164 yards. The roof was away from where Donald Trump was speaking. You can see here how close it was. There,
Okay,
that blue pin is Trump, and the shooter is on the closest, basically adjacent building. A low. I don't know how many stories it is, but a really direct line of sight here for the shooter.
It's crazy. And here's this video. We don't know who shot this video in Butler, Pennsylvania, but it is on the. It gives you a sense of like, this is where the audience was. There was still audience outside the perimeter of Trump's speech, and it gives you a sense of it. And then you're gonna, I mean, this is really sort of stunning. There are people who are talking about this guy up on the roof, and it is amazing that there could be people there who could see this guy, and there was not enough police presence, I guess, to do anything about it.
He was doing the job. I wouldn't even be doing this. I could get some beautiful places to gorgeous oceans. The
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down. See him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And Scott, I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a Senate.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals.
People in the podcast audience.
We have,
He's crying.
we have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof again.
I mean, you could hear people saying he's on the roof. They're yelling to a police officer, he's on the roof. And this isn't, and let's be clear too, the guy is dressed, he's actually apparently wearing a t-shirt that is merch from a YouTube gun community. It is not necessarily associated with any ideology, though it's, less typical that someone from the left did be in those, but one never knows. But the point being is that his entire outfit is tan. And if you look at the snipers who are on the roofs, they are wearing black.
Yeah.
And so it's unlikely that he was spotted and assumed to be a Secret Service sniper. Theoretically, they should know where all the snipers are.
But it also appears that some of the Secret Service were deploying cops to do a lot of jobs, local cops in the areas. We don't know if that was the instance in this, that it was a local police officer that missed it. But those are some of the questions being raised about Secret Service protocol, is how much are they outsourcing it to local police too?
It's crazy that there's not that many buildings to keep track of.
Right? No, and that's the closest one with apparently a police officer did, it's being reported, did go up a ladder, spot the shooter. The shooter saw the cop, raised his rifle, and the cop went back down the ladder, and then the shooter then immediately turned and began to fire. So his timing may have been affected by this cop spotting him at that moment.
But it's still unclear why the cop did not act in that moment. That's what's bizarre. Did the cop was this a Uvalde situation? Which I know that,
yeah, he saw a gun pointing at him and he saved himself.
Yeah, it was that, what we observed, or was, I don't know, there's some sort of miscommunication with the local police. We're still trying to figure that out.
It obviously was some type of breakdown. Here is KTKA Pittsburgh's Jennifer Barrasso. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen the BBC interview as well, where somebody had basically said, we were trying to tell the cops. This is another crowd member who talks about what he saw before the shooting took place.
Just take me back. What were you doing before the shooting happened? And then what did you see and hear?
I was just standing there like everybody else, waiting for Trump. And as Trump started, I noticed two officers that were looking for something or somebody. I was looking around myself and seeing a guy on top of one of the buildings go in between one building to the next, and went and told the officer that he was up there. And when I went back to my spot, I heard that people could still see the person from where they were standing. So I checked that out, and I went back to tell the officer that if he came over there, he could see them. And when I turned my back is when the shots started, and then it took me a second or two to figure out exactly what it was. And then it was just getting out of there and helping some other person out with her child, and we got out, and that was the end of that. And I went and left, and that was all.
I mean, there's that. And again, we don't really know. And let's just play, I guess, this last clip too, to just give you a sense of the timeline. Here is the video. Here is video of one of the, or two, I guess, of the Secret Service snipers on the roof nearest the stage, just almost to the right and slightly behind the stage.
But facing in the direction
But facing
of
directly
that
at that building.
Yes.
Which, I mean...
do we have that map again? Just like, so can we just show and compare?
Pop that map up.
So you see the map here, right? You see the building that is behind.
Put your cursor down to that building. It's right there. Go to where Trump is there, and then go to your right.
Yeah.
Right there, and yes,
that is where they are, and that's where they should, and they're facing in the direction of the shooter.
The main building that a shooter would come from.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, is that now I imagine there are all snipers on the other end of that building looking the other direction just because.
Why wouldn't you have snipers on the one the sniper was on?
That's another question.
It is very, or at the very least, spotters.
A cop, yeah.
Like somebody with binoculars, because that just seems to give you a good perspective on what the crowd is doing. Like you don't, it's very strange. And so you can see the sniper react to what he thinks he's about to see.
And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Okay, and so you, just before the first shot rings out, you see the sniper, the Secret Service sniper, look up over his scope to confirm what he's actually seeing in his scope. And then he gets back down, and the next set of shots you hear are presumably from that sniper killing the shooter.
But you have to ask the question of, if he was looking in that direction the entire time through his scope, with this shooter bear crawling on the roof for quite a period of time.
I think the
was the angle bad?
I think
they're behind
the pitch. It's a low pitch on the roof.
That's why he was staying
and
low.
it wasn't until he gets up that they see him, because he's coming from the other side of the pitch. So he probably gets up on his knees, more or less. The sniper does, and maybe the tan that he's wearing, I don't know, blends
it looks
into
like it blended in with the roof. I
guess. Mean, who knows? But it was a real failure there. The initial responses from the right were, of course, to attempt to. Further. Let's be clear. Their agenda is has been to stoke the notion of a civil war. Now, well, before we get to Republicans reacting, we should just say what we know about the would-be assassin at this time. That he was 20 years old, Thomas Matthew Crooks. He registered Republican, had given a $15 donation in 2021 in response to a survey
email
blast asking if Joe Biden should pardon Donald Trump.
From a pretty spammy pack. There's been mixed reports from, but none of them necessarily contradictory, reports from his classmates in high school, ranging from the kid at that time was bullied. Others say that he wasn't necessarily that bullied. I'm not suggesting that it matters. I'm just giving you what we've read at this point. There were two former classmates who said that he was conservative. One of whom was on the debate team with him. And former student Max R. Smith, this is coming from the Philadelphia Inquirer, recalled participating in a mock debate in a course they took together where their teacher posed questions on government policy and had students stand on opposite sides of the classroom to signal their support or opposition. The majority of the class were on the liberal side, but Tom, no matter what, always stood his ground on the conservative side. That's still the picture I have of him, just standing alone on one side while the rest of the class was on the other. It makes me wonder why he would carry out an assassination attempt on the conservative candidate. There was someone else who referred to him as being perceived as a Republican or conservative. Like Emma said, we may never know at this point why he did this. The DOJ apparently has his phone, and I would imagine access to the computer. His family is cooperating with the feds.
And it appears that his father may have purchased that rifle.
It's being reported that his father purchased the rifle. It is an AR-15. We could talk about obviously, like, Joe Biden should be calling for gun control at this moment. This doesn't happen if this, a kid has a gun that is going to be less powerful, frankly, from that distance. I mean, this is,
and to your point, I mean, that because the Republicans can't seemingly come up with like it's a Muslim person or this is a black person that we can stow up racial resentment towards, they're struggling to find a narrative here. It's a good opportunity for the Democrats to make it into their own, which is we need gun control in this country.
100%. I mean, as a political matter, we need gun control in this country.
Yeah.
So as a policy matter, it's obviously an imperative. And as a political matter, it's also a better time to attempt to push that policy through. And if it doesn't work, then it certainly becomes more of a wedge issue for the Republicans. Be that as it may, You had John Hinckley, who attempted to kill Reagan as a way of trying to impress Jodie Foster. During the 70s, Gerald Ford was involved in 2 assassination attempts that were like 3 weeks apart. One in Sacramento, California, by a person named, I can't remember her real first name, but her nickname was Squeaky Fromme, or her last name was Fromme. She was a member of the Manson family, but that is not why she did it. It involved Gerald Ford being invited to California, if I remember correctly, because Jerry Brown, who was the recent governor, was either disinvited or refused to go to like some Chamber of Commerce thing. And Ford came. Squeaky Fromme was concerned because part of this had to do with like smog legislation in California. And I believe Ford had inhibited it in some way, and she was convinced that the smog was going to kill the forests in California. And she attempted to shoot Gerald Ford, did not hit him. And then 2 weeks later, and I cannot remember the name of this shooter. I believe she was a member of a radical group who felt that shooting him would essentially start a civil war or some type of like revolution in the country. Now, Gemini Cricket says Squeaky's real name, I think, was Lynette. Lynette Squeaky Fromme, thank you. And so we don't know why this guy shot at Trump. It could have been just that Trump was coming to his hometown. He saw an opportunity to, go out in a blaze of glory in some fashion, wanted to, maybe was depressed, wanted to commit suicide by cop, as they call it, and go out and be in the books, forever in the history books. Maybe he wanted to start some type of civil war. Someone just wrote he was an accelerationist. I mean, that's not inconceivable. There are definitely conservative leaning groups, right-wing groups that are seeking to start a sort of a violent revolution. I mean, part of the reason why, like the Boogaloo Boys supported, and I have no reason to believe that this guy was a Boogaloo Boy. I don't know. The reporting, I'm sure if it's the case, we'll come across it. But I'm just expressing an ideology that's out there. The Boogaloo Boys, one of the reasons why they were siding with BLM protests was not so much that they felt a kinship or a sympathy with the nature of the BLM protests, but more its function in fighting back against the state, with the hopes that there would be some type of civil war that would bring about a more reactionary style society. So that's all we know at this point. But
I will say, it's good. It's a good thing he did not kill Trump. I have deep anxiety about what that would have done to the country in many ways. I think it could have been just more horrors, more violence, more all of that in the streets. But we have to see if the Democrats can capitalize on this moment to basically make this point where, when you said Trump says fight after he gets shot. And the reality is they're trying to say that Democrats calling Trump a threat to democracy is inciting violence against Trump. That's what they're going with now, which is just not the case. It's just not the case. And the reality is that it's been Trump's wing of the party for the nearly decade now that he's dominated Republican politics that have advocated for violence against protesters, against people who may disagree with them, against members of the press. So I don't want to see much both sidesing here. And the Democrats would be wise to not let that narrative take over.
Tic-tac-toe, I just want to make this clear. It says, my understanding is the cop was hoisting himself up to sea and let himself go and drop when the shooter turned towards him, so the cop didn't have the advantage of a ladder. That would make
more sense.
Some sense.
Yeah.
BL Biden says Grimm's article didn't confirm that the donation was from the Should Biden Pardon Trump poll. It was just that in the email the PAC sent out around that time, there were others they sent out around that time too. So it's unclear which email he responded to. But yes, I think that the initial inclination was that this is going to help Trump, and it very well may. But it also may remind people that one of the reasons why they didn't want to re-elect Donald Trump in 2020 was because of the drama that comes with Trump. Now, obviously, this is not Trump's doing per se. I mean, we'll never know what was in the mind of this shooter for sure. But
the AR-15 policy, though, I mean,
well, look, I mean, the existence of that, the ease in which that guy has that gun, is definitely a function of long-time conservative and Republican policy.
Because I think another thing that's been reported is he was not welcome at his local gun club, or the gun shooting.
That was the high school team,
and that should be, frankly, where our checks come from in this country. About, in my view of gun rights, is civil organizations like that you need to be a part of, and they need to validate that you are safe to own this gun. And that was a check. He wasn't safe for that. He's clearly not. He shouldn't be safe to just go purchase something that you could invade a country with.
One could argue that this sort of like the nature of our society and the nature of political violence, that Trump certainly has widened the Overton window, as it were, for the idea of political violence, and has diminished the import of political violence. When he jokes about Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Remember Second Amendment solutions?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's countless things, and we know the images of Biden. Pop this stuff up. This is just some of the images that have been, floating around the right wing world. Pop each one up. One is, and there's of course there's Donald Trump Jr. shooting. Has Hillary Clinton in prison. I know, what a nerd. In his cartridge.
That gun looks like a toy now.
Yeah, and go to the next one. There's a I guess a wrap on a car. That looks like Biden is tied up in the back of a pickup truck. Here is another one, same more or less image. Let's go, Brandon. There's one on the back of a pickup truck that looks like Biden's in the stockades. I mean, so this is in the air. The idea that people could associate these themes of violence and of drama with Trump may hurt him. I don't know. Frankly, around this time, maybe even closer to the election in 2016, even the day before the election in 2016, we had a Princeton professor on of statistics who basically came on and said, I don't know if he's from statistics or political science or what he was, but he basically said there was a 99% chance that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And so these things are unpredictable. There is a lot of reason and a lot of data to support right now the idea that Joe Biden cannot win, will not win in 3 months from now, 4 months from now. But who knows what happens tomorrow?
It can change, but I mean, in 2016, the data was in Hillary's favor. But part of what I started when I started doing this job was we were going around the Midwest, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I went to during this particular tour, and I remember leading up to the general, the Trump enthusiasm and saying this doesn't make sense, and I thought that there was a good chance that Hillary would lose, and that was when the data was on her side. Now we have overwhelming evidence at this current moment that Biden is down and down significantly, and that's before polling has come in from this shooting, which you're saying maybe it could turn things around, but it's we'll get into it, of course. But the thing that is so disenchanting, I think, for a lot of people is that there was a lot of momentum to get Biden off the ballot ahead of this, and now you have quotes from Democrats resigning themselves to a Trump victory in Axios, saying that, well, this is really going to slow the momentum on that front.
I don't know, Bernie and AOC.
All right, well, we're going to get to that in a minute. I just want to go through the rest of this stuff, but in a minute we're going to cover that because Biden gave a speech, in the day, I guess, before Trump was shot at, that reflects at least the strategy of AOC and Sanders, who are on one side of things, and then we can check in on what the sort of the more establishment Democrats are doing. But here, but in the wake of this assassination attempt, here is Georgia Representative Mike Collins. Hadn't quite gotten the memo yet that what we're going to do is the unity thing.
Oh, right.
Mike Collins writes, the Republican district attorney in Butler County, Pennsylvania, should immediately file charges against Joseph R. Biden for inciting an assassination.
Sure. I like this. I like this thread. He can't put two sentences together, but he's also inciting assassinations. They can't decide if he's a doddering old fool or also somebody working with the deep state to kill all white people or something.
He writes, Joe Biden sent the orders. Joe Biden on July 8th, 2024. We're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye.
He said that in private remarks. That would really have to travel quickly for it to be incitement of an assassination.
Well, I mean, unless he said it in private remarks to the assassin,
yes.
Which it does not appear that there's any record of this 20-year-old Republican heading to the White House.
I remember when was it Gabby Giffords there was like campaign literature literally putting her in the crosshairs.
Oh, there was there was literally campaign literature with him with her in the crosshairs. And I mean, let's be clear, we could spend the rest of the show running ads from Republicans firing weapons. You can find one from a Democrat, Joe Manchin, although now I guess he's an independent. Joe Manchin was the only other one I know who used the weapon. But I'm just going off the top of my head. Jody Ernst in Iowa had a gun and she was talking about, I think, firing at pigs, or I can't remember. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who was the guy who busted in the fake cop raid, the SWAT raid? I can't remember.
There was Dan Crenshaw, and they
Dan
had
Crenshaw.
that whole special ops.
Yes, there was
parachuting from a plane.
But I'm just saying, full on firing weapons as a way of indicating their. So this is, this is Republican stock and trade, as it were. Here is Florida Representative Corey Mills. And staying on theme with the Republican Party, that now, I don't know if people remember this, but there were real problems with the Secret Service going back to the Obama years. There was problems with Secret Service guys partying and missing
Dan
shifts.
Bongino is a good example of there's those kinds of folks in the Secret Service.
I mean, there was real problems with the Secret Service back then. So this has been a long-standing issue. And
Obama's Colombia trip, there was a bunch of scandals with Secret Service in there.
That's right. Dealing with prostitutes or something to that effect. I can't remember the details off the top of my head. But
they're going to shoehorn their core brand proposition into this. And the person going to do that is Congressman Corey Mills of Georgia, Georgia's 10th district.
Is when you go in and you're actually able to prevent an incident, not react to an incident. Even if you would have left a law enforcement officer's patrol car in that parking lot with the lights on, that could have been a deterrent. But when you have nothing that is actually showing force protection, you're encouraging this. Look, I'm not sure about who the individuals are on the individual detail Secret Service, but I can tell you under this Biden administration, the one thing I've seen is massive DEI hires. And I can tell you, when you primarily go after DEI, you end up with DIE.
So when you have these counter snipers waiting until 8 rounds are fired,
they're out there basically workshopping their DEI talking points. He was so proud of that too.
So
like
the anagram,
yeah.
the easiest anagram of all time.
And of course, there's an image there of like at least one or two women who are literally putting their bodies between what could be a shooter and the president at that moment. But it is impressive that in this instance, without knowing any details whatsoever, we'll automatically blame it on the hiring of apparently black people and women.
Literally women in the workplace. Like they have such a giant propaganda coup, and they pivot to women in the workplace on it.
I didn't see one non-white person in the Secret Service protection in the footage that I saw. I'm sure there could be somebody, but
Well, look into like the first black guy who was in the Secret Service if you want a little rabbit hole, but go ahead.
Okay, but no, I mean, there's really nothing to add except maybe they will single out that woman, you know.
Now, it's going to be interesting to see if they continue with that. There's been they did a pretty good job of clamping down on this stuff relatively quickly, and just pivoting to we need to pretend that Joe Biden's calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy is the same as Donald Trump saying we should Second Amendment this guy. It's okay if you beat people. It's okay if you go and attack Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Can you imagine if Joe Biden mumbled Second Amendment solutions?
I mean, honestly.
I mean, he did say battle box like 6 times in his reaction, but that was just, he was misspeaking. Yeah, they know how hollow it is. I don't think they can actually make the case that it's the Democrats inciting against violence against Trump, because the base is like, hey, but we kind of like the violence part of politics. Let's hold the whole brand proposition of Donald Trump for us.
Can you imagine Joe Biden reacting like this? This is September 2023, with Donald Trump talking about Nancy Pelosi and sort of this reference to her husband.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi, who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know?
They're laughing. It's a laugh line. That's amazing.
As a reminder, someone broke into Nancy Pelosi's home looking for her, motivated in part by Trump's rhetoric, with a hammer, and beat her husband, who is in his 80s, over the head with a hammer. And he's trying to say it's the other side that's inciting political violence? I mean, come on. Come on.
Do we have Donald Trump Jr.'s Halloween costume? I don't know if we have that. But it was basically like a pair of underwear and a hammer, and he said he was going as Nancy Pelosi's husband. I mean, can you imagine if Hunter Biden posted something like, you know, I don't know, half a
bloody
costume with a bloody ear, and going like, you know, I'm going as the Republican nominee or something like that. I mean, it would be.
Yeah, this was his
Yeah,
post.
this is it.
A hammer and a pair of underwear, because that's how her husband was found in his underwear, because he was in his home and somebody broke in with a hammer to kill him and his wife, potentially.
And lastly, we don't have to speculate on the nature of this political violence back in October of 2020. You may recall this, where Trump supporters in trucks tried to ram a Biden campaign bus off of a Texas highway. Now we know they're Trump supporters because of all the flags that are hanging out of there.
What tipped you off?
It is hilarious.
And they're literally trying to.
I'm about to run out of gas, which I'm sure some of you would love. Shit, look at that! Oh my god!
I mean, they're literally ramming him off the road. So that just gives you a sense of what what we're looking at when you hear people start to both sides this in terms of rhetoric. All right, let's just turn. We got a couple minutes left here to the implications for the race and the implications that this shooting seems to have had on the efforts by Democrats to get Joe Biden to drop out of the race.
And as a reminder, before this assassination attempt on Trump, it was reported that Obama was consulted on that George Clooney op-ed saying that his cognition had been obviously declined since Clooney had seen him previously. There were dozens of Democrats by this point, including top-ranking Democrats like Adam Smith and Himes out of Connecticut, who had been calling on Biden to step aside. Schumer reportedly traveled to Delaware to meet with Biden privately on Saturday. And then Politico was reporting this morning that since June 27th, Nancy Pelosi has been working the phones, is the phrase, in hopes of finding a way to ease him off the ticket. So that was the momentum. And then we had some of the most disgusting quotes come out post-assassination attempt of Trump in Axios, including a Democrat basically saying that they'd resign themselves to a Trump victory because they thought
a top
Democrat in the House
in leadership
who had said they'd resign themselves to a Trump victory because they felt that this attempt on Trump's life was going to slow the efforts to get Biden off the ticket.
And
which is an unacceptable answer.
And we should say it's not just one anonymous person. It seems like there's been many who are on various. There's been various reports on this. Here is Colorado Representative Jason Crow telling us, and we've heard multiple stories too of like he was on the phone with the Congressional Progressive Caucus,
center-lefty folks, right? I think
it was the CPC.
Yeah.
And,
that one too. Yeah.
And during the phone call, he says, "You're getting defensive. Try and be more positive." And then realizes, it was not a note that he was supposed to read. It was a note that he was just getting from his staffers on the phone. Now, look, it's not uncommon for politicians to be getting notes from their staffers when they're on a phone call, whether it's like foreign dignitaries or other people. We shoot IMs to each other during the show. This is not strange stuff. But the inability to assess in real time whether you're supposed to read this or this is supposed to be direction is a little bit problematic. They later said that he was joking and mocking his staff.
Yeah.
But
it's a great time for those kind of jokes.
Very funny stuff. Here is Jason Crow telling CBS's Margaret Brennan, this is Sunday, so this is the day after.
Good for him.
That he's concerned that Biden is on a path. And regardless of what your sense is this going to help Trump? Is it going to end up being forgotten in 2 weeks? is it going to hurt Trump? You're still starting from a baseline of Joe Biden planned, and his campaign planned the debate. Was it 2 weeks ago now? A week and a half ago, 3 weeks ago, as a way of basically saying we're going to shift things onto Donald Trump and make a referendum on Donald Trump, because we're going to remind people why they didn't want Donald Trump, because their strategy was we don't need to even have a candidate who can go out and sell stuff. All we need is Donald Trump to gin up enough resentment towards him. A good strategy, unless your candidate performs so poorly in a debate, so poorly that they become the story. And I mean, it's possible the assassination is going to change the narrative around Joe Biden, but I don't see how. Here is Jason Crow.
So when you say decide together the best path to go forward, you are not completely closing the door on the conversation about a change at the very top of the Democratic ticket.
Well, ultimately, that is the president's decision. We can voice opinions, and I don't make decisions without full information, and I don't yet have that full information.
He's made his opinion very clear that he's not going anywhere.
Well, again, I cannot speak for the president. All I can say is what I believe in the concerns that I have, and I've been very clear about those concerns because that is my duty to Colorado. That is my duty to my constituents and to my country. That is my oath. My duty is to make sure that we can address the challenges before us and we can win this campaign.
But you are, to be clear, still concerned that Joe Biden is on a losing path.
I do believe right now, unless there's a major change, that there is a high risk that we lose this election. You know, that group of Democrats on that call, again, we were the majority makers in 2018, and we will be those that will help us lead to the majority again this fall. We know how to fight and we know how to win these tough elections. And reading the tea leaves is very troubling for many of us right now. So we want to see a change. And that's what the questions that we're asking are about.
It is unclear to me when the DNC is actually going to have their roll call vote for the nomination. Originally, they had changed the date from the convention to, I believe it was early August or late July, because Ohio was messing around and essentially was threatening to keep Joe Biden off the ballot because his nomination as the nominee was coming after a filing date in Ohio. Then the Democrats basically, pegged a non-convention roll call of the delegates prior to that date. Subsequent to that, the Ohio legislature changed their law and basically provided a waiver, more or less, for Biden. Yet the Democrats maintained that date for their roll call, and then floated the idea of pushing it up to the 21st of July. I don't know if that's still a definitive date. It's unclear to me. Bradley, have we seen anything else about that? And so that's where we're at right now.
And it would be one thing if, I think a lot of our assessment of Hillary's viability in 2016 was based on the politics of the year and the situation versus the numbers, which were still tight, but more mixed. As I've said, Biden's down in basically every swing state, and it also appears that RFK is making a significant impact on his polling numbers, but it's basically every elected Democrat behind closed doors at this point. Like over the weekend, there was a meeting with senators, and Fetterman reportedly asked the senators in this meeting if they still want Biden on top of the ticket, and only 3 to 4 said that they did. It was Chris Coons, Tammy Duckworth, and John Fetterman. And Chris Coons and Duckworth, Chris Coons in particular just works for the Biden campaign as one of their top surrogates. So the thing about this and why it's so different is that if Nancy Pelosi's running around making calls, interested in at least keeping some power for the Democrats, if Chuck Schumer's concerned, if these moderate Democrats are concerned, this is not about policy, about who is better in terms of, Trump versus Biden or what kind of campaign Biden's going to run. I was encouraged to see all those progressive rhetoric he espoused at the rally, but that's not really relevant to the fact that can he win, because a lot of people are just saying, I just don't want a guy he's too old. He can't lead me. He's not going to be a leader of this country. And it just is really that simple, I think, for a lot of low propensity voters. They're not inspired by him. They get bummed out when they see him speak, or they think the Democrats are lying to them and propping somebody up who's not worthy of being the leader of the country. I think it offends people's sense of patriotism, and I think it's uninspiring, which is really what we need right now. So, and I'm not, it's odd to be more aligned with Pelosi here than AOC or Bernie, but
I think what they're doing is crazy.
Here is what the progressive strategy appears to be, as being reported by Semaphore and in other places. Really cool says progressive strategies to let the centrist Dems push Biden aside. Well, I think they're basically what they're doing is a hedge. Like in the classic sense. I think the assessment by the progressives in the House, and by that I mean like I think Jayapal is probably not on board with this, but AOC and the squad and Bernie Sanders. It's being reported that AOC basically had a conversation with Biden before she came out and publicly said that he's the nominee. We're moving forward. Bernie Sanders wrote an op-ed in support of Joe Biden just the other day. And almost simultaneously, here is Joe Biden speaking at a rally in Detroit, outlining his 100-day agenda for a second term. For a moment, for the sake of this analysis, put aside the fact that your first question is, hey, wait a second. If he could do this after he gets elected, why isn't he doing it right now? Put that aside for a moment, because we want to analyze why he's saying this.
I'm going to start by laying out the first 100 days of my second term. And here it is. The first bill I'm going to introduce will restore Roe v. Wade to make it the law of the land. I will sign the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We're not only going to stop Trump and the MAGA Republicans from cutting Social Security and Medicare, we'll expand and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. And here's how we're going to do it. Press always asks how. Listen, press, by making the rich pay their fair share of Social Security. We're going to end medical debt. By that I mean we've already made sure medical debt can no longer be put on your credit report. You can wipe out medical debt for pennies on the dollar. We're going to raise the federal minimum wage.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to. The idea of literally the U.S. government buying medical debt, because you can buy it in secondary markets for, again, like he says, pennies on the dollar. That is an idea that I have never heard articulated by a presidential candidate. Let's just finish this out. I think there's just another half a minute or so.
We're going to raise the federal minimum wage. We're going to pass the PRO Act, ending union busting once and for all. And I'm going to ban assault weapons again. I did it once, I'm going to do it again. We're going to keep leading the world. We are on climate and clean energy. When I signed the American Rescue Plan, the law expanded child care tax credit to cut child poverty in half in America, and it did. Republicans let it expire. I'm going to make child care tax cut permanent. And by the way, it increases economic growth, doesn't increase the deficit. People can work when you have child. No, I'm serious. That's the deal. We capped the cost of.
Okay. So, all right, put aside for a moment the skepticism as to whether he'll do this or whether he can or why hasn't he doing it now, et cetera, et cetera. And people are saying, what is the point of getting promises from this guy who's going to likely lose or weasel out if he somehow wins? I don't see the logic, says Dave from Jamaica. Here is the thinking, at least from what I've put together and from what we've read, and people can assess it. I'm not necessarily endorsing this strategy. But there are 4 potential outcomes of this election right now as it stands today. One is that Joe Biden wins. One is that Joe Biden loses. One is that Kamala Harris wins. One is that Kamala Harris loses. From the progressives' perspective, there is no one who's going to replace Joe Biden they are going to have more influence with, or who's going to do more or even equal to the same amount of progressive policies. They then, with that assessment, they've got to then decide, where are we going to put our political resources? We don't have the ability to push Joe Biden out of office. That ability lies really with someone like Nancy Pelosi, with Hakeem Jeffries, with Chuck Schumer. When Fetterman asked if there are any senators in here who think that Joe Biden should stay on the ticket, Bernie Sanders did not raise his hand in that meeting, because ultimately they probably think that he should go. But if they realize they have no influence on that, they have an option. They can either support Biden being pushed out and accept the fact that whoever comes in is going to give progressives less in their assessment, or they can basically play both sides. The outcome, Kamala Harris is not going to take it out on progressives because they didn't give their support, because she knows that progressives aren't going to be the person that's going to push it through the finish line.
I just wish she was the one who was communicating this, really.
Who?
Harris, who could communicate exactly these topics.
Well, but she wouldn't
as a United
necessarily.
Right, because this is a lifeline for Biden. I think it's misplaced.
So the progressives decide, okay, we can't really get anything for our support if we push them out. There's only one scenario where we can get, and it's let's just say, just for the sake of argument, a 25% chance, the bet that we're going to place. But the bet that we place on the other bets, they don't get us anything anyways. They get us no returns. So we have one bet out of 4 that's going to get us a return. And if it comes in, we're going to win big. If it doesn't come in, we're not going to lose.
Yeah, unless the Democrats take the wrong lesson from Biden spouting out progressive policy priorities and he loses a massive swing,
so we own this loss.
So they'll blame the left no matter what, of course. But this YouGov, a new poll just came out. Arizona, Trump's up +7. Georgia, +4, Trump. Michigan, +2. North Carolina, +4. Nevada, +4. Pennsylvania, +3. +5 in Wisconsin, all for Donald Trump.
But here's the point, is that there's always a natural inclination to blame the left. But in this instance, it's going to be that much harder, because everybody's pretty clear if Joe Biden loses, why he's going to lose.
It'll be Joe Biden's fault. It will be. And I think that is, unfortunately, when you hear those despondent quotes from senior Democrats, they're not willing to stick their neck out right now with such a short period of time, and they'd rather Biden take the fall and be okay with Donald Trump getting reelected as opposed to doing what's right for the country, which is honestly says everything right now about the state of the Democratic Party and why it needs desperately a change in the way that in its attitude and in its strategy. This is just really loser crap.
Now, let's say Harris does replace Biden, and Biden has now set his agenda, which is these points. Put aside your skepticism as to whether or not they can be done, because in many respects, it really doesn't matter. Well, it of course matters, but it's still a positive for a president who can't get these things done to be speaking about them aspirationally. Okay. If Harris does take over the campaign, it is highly unlikely she is going to diverge from these policies. Will she adopt them? She probably won't necessarily go about talking about these things, but maybe a couple will get in there. And so if I thought that AOC coming out and saying Biden's got to go would increase the likelihood of Biden going by 1%. Now, you could argue that AOC and Bernie Sanders supporting Biden increase the likelihood that he stays.
At least for a little while. But Bernie doesn't need to do so much. Bernie doesn't need to take out an op-ed in the New York Times about
relax.
how Biden needs to stay in. Like, if we're talking about beating fascism right now, let's get serious and be responsive to the voters. 84% of Americans think he's too old. In some polls, it's over 70%.
Want a different candidate.
2/3 want a different candidate. The staggering poll over the weekend from NBC was looking at level of satisfaction within the party for their particular candidate. The Democrats, I'm finding it here, but I remember the figure. Here it is: 33% of Democrats are satisfied with Biden as the nominee versus 71% with Trump in the Republicans. And when you compare that to 2016, I know it's different circumstances, but still important to point out, 54% of Democrats were satisfied with Hillary Clinton as the nominee. And she won the popular vote, we know, and made it close. It was a close election, even with all of her issues and her unpopularity. But she still lost.
70,000 votes across 3 states. Biden won with 40,000 votes across 3
and he's
states.
down in every swing state now in deep holes, and the Democrats in those states are overperforming. So this is not, the data really tells one picture, and it's not an ambiguous one. And so
what does the data say, though, if aliens come down and
right.
say, we can cross time and believe us, you should vote for Biden?
I know. And so, like, I was glad to see that appearance by the Colorado representative on Face the Nation, because all the quotes about how, this is going to keep Biden in for a while, this should not distract us from the goal. In fact, it should inform the goal that this is a movement on the right with deep violence, with like the prospect of the Senate map not being good for Democrats. The Democrats need to at least maintain one chamber. We want to give this guy, we want to play around and give Trump, who is under numerous, facing numerous court cases, and we'll get to that.
Less so now.
Less now. We want to give him both the House and the Senate. The Democrats should be responsive to this regardless of what happened over the weekend with the attempt on Trump's life.
Let me just give a quick take on that before we go to the fun half. Eileen Cannon, who is down in Florida, has been handling the Trump stolen documents case, dismissed the case today by saying that the appointment of Jack Smith as special prosecutor was a violation of the Constitution Appointment Clause. And nobody that I have read, it just came out this morning. Nobody thinks that this is actually a huge win for Trump, because it was quite clear that this case was not going to be adjudicated before the election regardless. It is likely that this will be overturned by the 11th Circuit. Some people have speculated that it may get Hunter Biden, his case thrown out. And there are apparently, like, if he had been able to get the case dismissed after a jury was sat, then it would have been double jeopardy. So it really comes down to, will Donald Trump be president or not be president, as to whether he's going to be held accounted in this instance. So that's the long and short of that.
Well, what's also interesting in that is that her reasoning, which she used the appointments clause of the Constitution to essentially say that Jack Smith's appointment was in some way a violation of the Constitution. That was exactly what Clarence Thomas had written in his concurrence, or I guess his separate opinion in the Trump immunity case. So this is another example of these judges basically taking not just tips, but the roadmaps that Thomas and Alito and the other conservative justices lay out for them, where it's like, well, you can come back with this argument and we might be more willing to hear it, or this is a loophole that you could use. So it could be a good thing, right? Then basically maybe they could get her off the case. That's what I saw some people alluding to.
Yes,
that,
theoretically could ask her to be, Jack Smith could ask her to be recused.
But it's a good example either way of how this extreme right Supreme Court is giving directions to some of the lower courts to say, like, this is something that, like, wink and a nod, we might be more willing to hear, or this is a way that you could get around this X, Y, and Z. So
Blue and Red Country says, imagine being such an opportunist that you wait for an assassination attempt to do it so no one hears about it. I do not. I don't think that this ruling was. I think this ruling was planned much earlier than Saturday. I think it was timed to be released before the convention, and so that he could get up there and say, "I'm not facing any of this stuff, and we're still, appealing our case in New York in the light of the Supreme Court's ruling, et cetera, et cetera." So I just wanted to put that to bed, folks. It's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. It is going to be a very painful 4 months ahead of us. And then it could be a very, very painful 4 years. And frankly,
rest of century.
A very, very painful 60 years, 80 years in the wake of 2 new Supreme Court justices who will be in their 30s or 40s, sitting on the court for 40 or 50 years, basically to the right of Clarence Thomas and Alito, not to mention climate change and labor and antitrust. I mean, the list goes on and on. So, your support will help us be here to tell you how miserable things are.
God.
Or how we just dodged a bullet, as it were.
By the skin of our ear.
Exactly. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. JoinTheMajorityReport.com.
Hey, what are ears for?
Am I supposed to answer that question?
It's rhetorical.
It's because it's like how Vincent van Gogh sent his ear to his beloved because he loved her so much. Trump loves this country so much. That's why he's giving away part of his ear.
Anyway.
How much do you want to bet that that's like a piece of merch?
Oh yeah.
Soon.
What, a skin flap?
No, or just like a little a mold of an ear with a hole through it.
They got
on a little pedestal.
We should make a fake trend that you slice your ear if you're a true Trump supporter.
True. They'll find some way to like make Mike Tyson speak at the RNC or something like that too.
There you go. Don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, you get 10% off.
Did you say VP for Mike Tyson?
Mike Tyson.
Yeah,
have they announced
Tyson
that it's
make
what's his
my
face?
ear whole again?
Apparently, JD Vance is getting a
It's
bunch
JD
of security attention.
Yeah, he has a motorcade.
It's been clear that it's JD Vance for a couple of weeks. As far
This
as
is a
I'm
big
concerned.
win for Don Jr. after Trump had publicly said that Barron's now everybody's favorite. Don Jr.'s been the one that's been pushing for JD Vance, so maybe he's back in Daddy's good graces.
I mean, look, the bottom line is he's the best argument. Because if you're not going to get a God Squad candidate and you feel like you've locked that up, what you need if you're Trump is you need money. And you need sort of like, and Who are those people? It is the Elon Musks, who's now donating a big chunk of cash. And the what's his face, Peter Thiel's buddy, who's on Slack, is David Slack. What is it?
Oh yeah,
David Sachs.
David Sachs, Peter Thiel, all of that kind of money, both finance and tech, come via JD Vance, and so he's going to deliver that stuff to Donald Trump. Emma.
On ESPN today, we'll talk a little bit about what to watch with the Paris Olympics coming up, some of the soccer wins over the weekend, Argentina and Spain, despite Messi going out with that horrible injury. Wimbledon we'll talk a bit about. Also, I'm going to incorporate some Biden talk into this because Charles Barkley, Bob Costa, all these speakers are coming out trying to say, like, do the patriotic thing and step down. So we'll check out some of where the sports world is on the election. YouTube.com/ESPN show today.
Matt.
Patreon.com/leftreckoning. Matt McManus joined David and I to talk about his upcoming book, The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism. So if he as he tries to square that circle, goes through the history of liberal socialism, stuff like that, patreon.com/leftreckoning to get those ideas.
See you in the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go start life.
Libertarians. They're so stupid, though. Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him!
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back.
We are back.
Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Bug Durgam. It's unfortunately sounding more and more like it's going to be J.D. Vance for Trump